Jesus and his disciples had eaten the Passover supper, the last supper Jesus would eat with the disciples. Judas had left. He was on his way to the priests to tell them where Jesus was. Jesus had told the people that he would die on a cross for their sins so they could go to heaven with him. Now the time had come. What a wonderful way for God to show his love for a rebellious world. Jesus and the disciples walked through the streets and out of the city. It was still night and the moon was shining. They were on their way to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus often went there to pray. When they came to the garden, Jesus said, "Stay here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John with him. He wanted these disciples to pray with him. "Stay awake with me," Jesus said. "My heart is breaking with sorrow and sadness." Walking a little further, he fell on his knees and prayed, "Father, if it is possible, don't let me go through the terrible suffering that lies ahead, but let your will be done, not mine." Jesus knew what was going to happen. Crucifixion was shameful and cruel, but worse still was the thought that he, who had never sinned, was to be judged as a sinner and treated as one. He was to be blamed for everybody's sins. There was no other way to deliver man from sin's penalty and power. He prayed, "If it is possible, please don't let it happen." But he knew it must happen. If he were to give up now, there would be no hope, no salvation for anybody. And that's why he said, "Your will be done, not mine." In spite of Jesus' need for them, the 3 disciples had fallen asleep. "Peter," Jesus said, "couldn't you stay awake with me for 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not give into temptation." Then he looked at them with gentleness and compassion. "Your spirit is willing, but your bodies are weak," he said. Again he left them and went away to pray. He came back, and once more they had fallen asleep. Jesus went back to pray a third time. A third time he returned and found the disciples sleeping. "Are you still asleep?" he asked. Jesus knew what was ahead for them. He had wanted them to also ask God for help. Then he told the disciples, "The time has come. I am betrayed into the hands of evil men." Suddenly the darkness was shattered by torchlight. A mob, including Roman soldiers, surged through the trees, their swords glistening in the moonlight. Judas walked up to Jesus and kissed him. This was the sign that Judas had said he would give. The soldiers moved forward to arrest Jesus. Peter was furious. He pulled out a sword of his own and lashed out wildly, cutting off the ear of one of the high priest's servants. "Put your sword away, Peter," Jesus said firmly. "If I wished to be free, I could call armies of angels to fight for me. But I am ready to give up my life according to God's plan." Then Jesus gently touched the man's ear and healed him. The frightened disciples watched as Jesus allowed the soldiers to take him away. In panic and despair, the disciples deserted Jesus and fled. If you had been in the garden that night, what do you think you would have done?